She survived a terrifying death, and now seeks sinister revenge. 7 haunting secrets revealed. Sarah Thompson stood paralyzed at her front door, heart pounding like a drum in her chest. The shadows of the evening crept closer, thickening the air with an oppressive weight that felt like a noose tightening around her throat. The neighborhood, usually bustling with laughter and the enticing smell of barbecue, now echoed with an unsettling silence. She had fled from death once, clawed her way back from the abyss, but was she now trapped in a nightmare that refused to release its grip? An anonymous note lay on her welcome mat, a simple scrawl that sent icy tendrils of dread curling through her gut. "I know what you did." Panic swelled within her as she stumbled back, trembling hands clutching the doorframe. Day after day, that note gnawed at her sanity. Chatter about missing pets filled the air, each story a dark reminder of her own past, how she had barely escaped. Was it just her? The whispers at night felt more pronounced, like the whole world had conspired to witness her demise. She brushed the note aside as a prank, but the weight of dread settled heavily on her shoulders. The neighbor, Jay, who used to greet her with friendly waves, now cast a predatory look her way that turned her stomach. When he laughed, the sound was hollow, each chuckle like a knife slicing through her fragile peace. "What are you doing, Sarah?" she murmured to herself, as she watched the sun dip beneath the horizon, and with it, her feeling of safety. The laughter outside had dimmed, shadows lengthened, and her heart's rhythm quickened at the lurking unknown. Clutching Lily's drawing of a bright sun like a talisman, she felt the cracks in her brave face beginning to fracture. She needed help, but when she approached the local authorities, their dismissive shrugs slapped her in the face. "Accidents happen, kids wander off," they said, words dripping with arrogance. With no support, she was left spiraling deeper into a pit of despair. She took action, digging into the neighborhood's unsettling history. Wasn't there talk of an old resident who vanished without a trace? Every glance around her home became a potential clue, but dread flooded her heart each time the shadows shifted. Her mind seethed with paranoia, and the walls of her house seemed to close in tighter by the hour. Each night brought restless sleep as she jumped at every small noise, the creak of the floorboards, the rustle of leaves outside her window. Her skin prickled with fear, each sound only amplifying her sense of impending doom. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let us continue. A final message slipped through her door, shattered her already fraying composure. "You didn't escape, you only delayed the inevitable." The room spun, a vertiginous whirlpool of fear as she felt the air shift, a presence lurking just beyond her perception. Was someone watching? Heart racing, she strained to see any movement outside, every shadow a potential threat. Just as she thought she could pull herself together, a dark silhouette emerged at the edge of her yard, eyes glimmering with malice. What would happen next, Sarah wondered. Was this the moment her past would finally come to reclaim her? Or was it an end she'd never seen coming? The night had just begun. The darkness deepened around Sarah, wrapping her in a cloak of terror. The silhouette stood motionless, an ominous figure carved against the night, and something primal in her screamed for her to run. She backpedaled, her breath hitching as the shadows danced mockingly. Every creak of her home seemed magnified, every twitch of the trees outside an echo of her own rising panic. What should she do? Fight? Flee? The front door loomed behind her, a flimsy barrier against whatever had come for her. In that instant, she felt completely exposed, stripped bare of courage and resolve. The silhouette shifted slightly, a twitch of muscle or an intent to advance. She couldn't tell. The moonlight caught a glint, and her heart sank a blade, sharp and glimmering with malevolence. Sarah, the voice, low and gravelly, slithered through the air, as intimate as a lover's whisper yet as threatening as death itself. "You've forgotten me, haven't you?" The moment froze. Recognition washed over her like frigid water, slamming her back into haunted memories. The voice belonged to someone she had tried desperately to forget. Panic surged like an electric shock. Her hands clenched into fists, the drawing stifling her grip as a cascade of horror flooded her mind. "What do you want?" She managed to choke out, her voice trembling as it broke through the suffocating darkness. "Want?" The figure stepped forward, revealing a weathered face that bore deep scars both physical and emotional. "I want what you owe. You can't run from the past, Sarah. You should know that." The fear enveloped her, ricocheting like a pinball in her chest. She had thought she'd escaped him, thought she'd buried her history under layers of new choices, new life. But here he was, the embodiment of her worst fears, clawing at the doors she'd desperately locked. In a sudden surge of instinct, she turned to bolt inside, but the door was flung open before she could even touch the handle. Just as she caught sight of the familiar smirk on his face, everything blurred into chaos. "I wouldn't do that, darling," he said with a sickly sweet tone that dripped malice. "You and I have unfinished business. And I've been watching. You have no idea how many secrets are buried right beneath your feet." Terror spiked in her veins. Unfinished business? She felt sick as thoughts of the neighborhood's missing pets, the laughter turned to silence, flooded her mind. "What do you know?" She hissed, desperate for power over a situation she felt slipping through her fingers. "More than you think. The truth isn't caring, and it doesn't forget." He paused, eyes narrowing. "You thought you could start anew, but I'm here to remind you that the stakes are much higher." A sudden noise erupted from the darkness, crashing like thunder. The sound pulled her attention from him momentarily, a rush of leaves and distant panic. It was coming from the direction of her neighbors' homes, and the realization struck her like a slap in the face. She wasn't the only one in danger. That knowledge ignited a flicker of defiance in her mind. She wouldn't let herself be a victim again. Fueled by adrenaline, she turned on him. "I'm not afraid of you." "Oh, but you should be." He lunged forward, and without thinking, Sarah shoved him aside, racing toward the noise. But as she left the shadowy veil of her own porch, another figure emerged, creeping from the tree-line, eyes glimmering just like J.S. had, malicious and hungry. Her heart dropped as a horrifying thought crashed into her mind. Maybe she hadn't only abandoned her past, but had also put everyone else in danger. What was waiting in the shadows tonight? And what horrors would she have to face to break free from this nightmare? The night was far from over, and the darkness had more secrets to unveil. The wind picked up, howling like a ghost as Sarah sprinted toward the noise. She could feel the shadows clawing at her feet. Her heart pounded in her chest, each beat a frantic reminder she was still alive, still fighting. The world blurred around her, the familiar faces of neighbors transforming into a horror show of twisted nightmares. Fingers of fear wriggled through her mind. What had she done? Did she drag everybody down with her? The thought terrified her more than the dark figures lurking behind the trees. As she neared her neighbor's yard, the stench of something rotten filled her nostrils, overwhelming her senses. Then she saw them. Several dark forms huddled around something on the ground, their features distorted in flickering shadow. She slowed, every instinct screaming at her to turn and run. They moved like predators, silent but deadly, fixated on their twisted prey. "What is happening?" she whispered to herself, not ready for the answer. Just then, a scream shattered the night, raw and piercing. It wasn't a human scream, it was a desperate yelp, a terrified protest from a creature trapped in chaos. She mustered every ounce of courage and darted towards the commotion, stepping into the sickening scene unfolding before her. The figures, increasingly clearer in the light of distant street lamps, were not human but twisted shadows of once beloved pets, the neighborhood cats and dogs. Their eyes glinted with a wild fear matching her own. No, she gasped, horror ripping through her gut. They were trapped under a net, but it was the figure pulling the strings that made her blood run cold. "Look who's come to join the party." Jay leaned over the snared animals, a wicked grin stretching across his scarred face. "Didn't you learn the first time, Sarah? Ignorance doesn't protect you." The realization slammed into her this was his game. He had lured her here not just to taunt her but to unleash chaos. Her heart thundered as she clutched the strap of her bag, feeling the jagged edges of the old baseball bat she'd tucked inside, remnants of her past defenses. How could you? She breathed. They didn't do anything to you. No, but they remind you of your failures. His voice dripped with malice, and he stepped closer to the writhing pets, who whimpered in distress. And that, my dear, is the point. It's fun to watch you squirm. She couldn't afford to feel helpless again. With one deep breath, she flung herself forward, wielding the bat like a protective barrier. Get away from them. In that moment, something shifted in the darkness. The other figures emerged from behind the trees, no longer just shadows. They were a terrifying cadre, neighbors, friends, people she had called her own, all under his control, eyes glossed over with an unnatural gleam. Join us, Sarah, one of them hissed, stretching a hand toward her, a twisted grin revealing sharp teeth. Your place is with us now. Panic flooded her system, propelling her into a frenzy. Sarah swung her bat, missing the first figure but connecting with the second. The crack echoed, sharp and satisfying, but it rattled her. They were not her friends anymore. She had brought this upon them. What would it take to save them? Do you remember how this started? Jay taunted, circling her. We all have our darkness. I'm here to show you yours. Just give in, and you can rule it all. Sweat poured down her face as she realized the truth. If she couldn't fight them back, they'd swallow her whole. She needed answers. She needed to know what had awoken these horrors. In the dim light, she saw a glimmer the knife he had once held, half buried in mud. It beckoned like a cursed relic. Her resolve hardened. If she could get it, she could cut the ties binding her friends and protect those terrified animals. But would she have to confront her own darkness to do it? J's voice slithered back to her. What will you choose, Sarah? The past or the present? You can't outrun the truth. As she lunged toward the blade, a shriek echoed through the night, louder and more primal, sending a chill straight to her bones. In that heartbeat, she knew, whatever lay ahead was waiting, and this battle was going to push her to the very brink. But would she have the strength to confront the dark memories rising from the shadows? The chaos was only beginning, and time was running out. She lunged for the knife, fingers grasping at the damp earth, but just as she expected the cool metal against her touch, J's voice rang out, foreboding and steeped in amusement. Wrong move, darling. It was as though shadows surged toward her, pulsating with a hunger that felt alive. The air grew thick, nearly suffocating her. Panic clawed deeper into her throat, tightening like a noose. She feared she would choke on her disbelief. Neighbors she had known for years, faces twisted in agony and madness, continued to leer at her, waiting. Do you think that could save them? He mocked, taking a step forward. You don't realize how deep this runs. They've already chosen just like you will. Gripping her bat with a newfound desperation, she twisted, swinging wildly at the nearest shadowy figure. A crack echoed through the night, the impact sending a shockwave up her arms. The figure stumbled back, revealing the face of her next-door neighbor, but his eyes burned with a strange, feral intensity. Grotesque remnants of his humanity faded as he reshaped himself into a monstrous entity. With every glance, the faces morphed again, becoming something out of a nightmare, an ever-shifting gallery of the familiar turned abhorrent. Each pet they tormented seemed to sense the danger, their whimpers merging with the howls of the wind, a symphony of dread. I can help you. Jay cackled, watching her struggle. Together we can create something beautiful. You could be free. All you have to do is embrace what's inside. It was like being pulled down into an ocean of despair, where swallowing water only brought on further panic. But the animals, they were helpless. She couldn't let their suffering continue because she feared what she might become. Taking a deep breath, she turned her back on the knife and focused on the writhing pets, tears of frustration brimming in her eyes. I want to let them suffer. She shouted, throwing caution to the wind. She charged forward, past Jay and the horde of manipulated townsfolk. She swung fiercely, connecting with another one of her neighbors, who let out a tortured howl. It struck her like a whip, but adrenaline surged. With each crack of the bat, she imagined cutting the threads of control that bound them to Jay, each strike infused with raw purpose. Fool! Jay sneered, his voice tacking on layers of twisted laughter. As she fought her way through the crowd, she could almost hear the echoes of their names, the memories clawing at her: David, Lisa, Hannah. People whom once shared barbecues and laughter transformed into specters of dread. Suddenly, sadness washed over her, momentarily draining her strength. But the shrieks of the trapped animals reignited her resolve. She couldn't falter now. Gripping the bat tighter, she maneuvered with purpose, pinballing between the dark figures, redirecting their aggression as she made her way toward the pets. Be free. I'll save you. She screamed. With one mighty swing, she smacked the net that entangled them, her heart racing in tandem with the pounding noise of her strikes. The snared creatures began to scatter, their eyes brightening, their cries more urgent and hopeful. One by one, they broke free, slipping out from beneath the tangles of the net as if they sensed the turning tide, brought to life by her defiance. But just as relief began to swell in her chest, those freed animals stumbled towards her only to be engulfed in the shadows that lingered, drawn back like moths to an ominous flame. Their eyes darted towards her, caught in a struggle between trust and terror. No! She shouted, spinning back to face Jay. The grin on his face darkened, morphing into a look of deadly intent. This charade ends now. He hissed, and suddenly the air crackled, a sinister energy swirling around him. You think you can escape? They're mine, Sarah. And you can't fight what you truly are. Tension thickened as the shadows writhed closer, drawing in like a storm cloud ready to unleash hell. She took a step back, fear taking hold once again, but something fierce stirred within her. The shadows may have marked her as prey, but they had awakened a fierce need for defiance. She wasn't done yet. Who am I? She bristled, her voice gaining strength as she glared defiantly at Jay. You'll find out soon enough, he replied, his smirk deepening, shadows crawling behind him like pets waiting for a command. In that heartbeat, she understood, this fight was far from over. The night was merely an introduction to an unkind truth, one that awaited just beyond the veil of chaos. What stood before her was no longer just about survival, it was a battle for her freedom, not just for herself, but for everyone ensnared in Jay's sinister web. Then, without warning, the ground trembled beneath her feet. A low, rumbling growl echoed from deep within the shadows, an otherworldly warning that declared they were all on borrowed time. The darkness was hungry, and it was closing in fast. Would she stand and fight the darkness that threatened to consume everything, or would it swallow them whole? Time was slipping through her fingers like sand. The shadows surged forward as if the darkness itself had transformed into a living entity, hungry and relentless. Sarah felt the weight of the air shift ominously around her, almost tangible. She gripped the bat harder, her knuckles bleached, every instinct in her screaming to flee. But where could she go? The streets she had known now twisted into a nightmare. Run, and I'll make them suffer tenfold, Jay's voice slithered from the depths of the encroaching gloom, oily and filled with an unholy glee. There's no escaping the truth, dear Sarah. You know it, and they know it. She felt sick. Her own skin crawled as reality shattered around her, with swirling faces of her friends acting out their twisted fates. Desperation clawed at her throat, the fight or flight urge battling against the confusion gripping her heart. The growl deep in the shadows rumbled again, this time vibrating her bones. It was a primal sound, older than fear itself, and it sent a jolt of horror through her. She could barely comprehend what lay beyond the darkness. Was it a creature? Or something worse? Jay stepped forward, his expression dark, his eyes flickering with that unnatural light. Join me, embrace the lurking old magic. Together, we could create wonders that this town has never seen. They didn't choose the darkness, but you're different. With every syllable, shadows flicked and danced around him, bending the light till it pooled at his feet like spilled ink. She hated that he could see into her doubt, her torment. Was there something inside her waiting to rise? Something he wanted her to embrace? The very thought sickened her. Suddenly, she noticed the remaining pets, eyes wide with terror, huddled close together against the encroaching tide of horror around them. Their pathetic whimpers mixed with the malicious laughter of Jay, struck her to the core. She couldn't fail them. Get away from them. She screamed, and with a sudden surge of newfound determination, she charged straight at Jay. With every ounce of strength, she swung her bat towards him, her breath sharp and ragged. The impact against his shoulder sent a shock through her that rippled into the air like a tremor. For a fleeting moment, an expression of shock flitted across his face, causing a flicker of hope to swell in her chest. But then, a new wave of darkness coiled around him, reconstituting his form, and he laughed a high, chilling sound. Touching, but futile. For every step he lost to her, countless shadows circled back, clutching onto his essence, like a flock of crows to their master. With every creature freed, every bit of hope that sparked inside her drove the shadows nearer, their whispers clawing at her sanity. They were telling her things. Horrible, hideous truths. Join us, Sarah, they sang, each voice a twisted echo of reality, familiar yet grotesquely distorted. Join us and let go of your fear. No. She gasped, shaking her head as tears spilled down her cheeks. I won't give in. As she screamed her rebellion, light exploded from the cracks of her anger, bursting through the suffocating darkness like a beacon. She felt a grounding warmth radiate from within her, a power she had never tapped into. But before she could fully embrace it, a chilling silence enveloped the area, and then everything went dark. The extinguishing of light felt like a slap to her face. Panic surged again as shadows enveloped her body, constricting around her like serpents squeezing tighter with each shallow breath. An unimaginable weight pressed on her chest, and she struggled to keep her mind clear. Ah, there it is, Jay murmured, the echoes of malevolent laughter rising. You're finally feeling it. The pull of despair. It calls for you, doesn't it? A gentle embrace from a long-lost friend. The ground shook once more, raw power emanating from the very heart of the darkness. What horror awaited her? Somewhere deep within, the flickering light still danced, urging her to fight, to stay alive. But with every passing second, with every whisper of darkness, her will was starting to wane. Would the shadows claim her entirely, snuffing out the last flame of hope? Or could she grasp the flicker of truth in time to foil the sinister grip threatening to pull her into eternal night? The clock was ticking, and darkness was closing in. The shadows tightened their hold, their cold tendrils wrapping around Sarah like a noose. She gasped, the air turning thick and heavy, suffocating her resolve. Panic clawed at her chest, heart racing against the weight pressing down on her. She was losing ground, losing hope. Do you feel it, Sarah? Jay taunted, his voice smooth yet sharp, a knife cutting through the fabric of her panic. This freedom to embrace the dark. To let it speak to you, to guide you. You're the one who has always been afraid of what's inside, but now it's your chance. Screams echoed in her mind, the cries of her friends twisted into an endless loop of agony. Each sound morphed into a flurry of shadows that tightened around her, each face flickered into view, their expressions twisted in fear and betrayal. She couldn't lose them. The bat slipped from her hand, clattering against the pavement as the darkness surged again, fueling the chill consuming her. Desperation clawed at her, but she fought back. She needed to hold on to the light within her, but the weight of despair threatened to snuff it out. Sarah, dear. Jay cooed, stepping closer, the shadows swirling around him like a living cloak. You have the potential to become something powerful. Together, we can rule over this decaying town, bring forth a new order of chaos. His gaze bored into her, searching for cracks in her resolve. Never. She shouted defiantly, a wild surge of energy coursing through her. Lightning fast, the flicker of light within her ignited as she focused on the warmth it offered. The power surged through her body, radiating outward, countering the shadows. In a desperate bid, she thrust her hands toward the darkness, channeling everything she felt into that spark. A blinding beam of light erupted from her fingertips, slicing through the dark. For a breathless moment, J's confident expression faltered. The shadows recoiled, shrieking in agony. The ball of light expanded, encasing her completely, pushing back the suffocating blackness. But even as it pushed back, tendrils from the dark reached around the glow, grasping and pulling, trying to reclaim what was theirs. Sarah clenched her fists around her light, fighting off the encroaching shadows, pushing with all her might. Then everything gave way. The power dimmed, faltering against the fierce pull of the dark. A scream tore from her throat as shadows wrapped around her legs, dragging her down, the light dwindling. "Join me," Jay hissed, his voice seductive now. "Release yourself from this futile struggle. All you need to do is give in. Let the darkness show you the way." She felt the despair wash over her like ice water, but at that moment, something shifted inside her, a flicker of determination ignited. "No!" she roared, summoning every ounce of strength from within. As she fought the shadows, the light flickered one last time and burst forth in a radiant explosion, sending waves of brightness crashing against the suffocating darkness, forcing it back. A moment of silence fell, thick and oppressive, as the shadows screeched and writhed around her. The ground beneath her trembled, cracking under the weight of her unleashed fury. She was breaking free, but a price was demanded. Suddenly, a searing pain shot through her as tendrils of darkness wrapped around her arms, pulling her back. She staggered, realizing she faced a turning point. Was this truly her path? "Join the shadows," Jay's words echoed, tugging at her mind, tempting her to embrace the darkness. "Your friends will suffer, but you could save them. Why not become their savior?" The shadows howled with desperation, as if sensing her wavering heart, tugging at her conscience. She could feel the pull, stronger than ever, promising revenge, power and a chance to protect those she loved. But at what cost? And just as her resolve was about to crumble, a glimpse of her friends appeared, their faces lighting up her vision even in the chaos. Their smiles, their love, it all rushed back to her, feeding her spirit. "No!" she cried, gathering her energy as blackness encroached again, gnashing its teeth around her heart. "I will not succumb." The ground itself roared, the shadows writhed, and for the briefest of moments, she felt a tether to something greater, something fierce and relentless. But what truly awaited her in this battle, redemption or damnation? As her knees buckled, that thread of light stretched thin, fraying as J's laughter echoed, promising horrors yet to come. And deep in the distance, the darkness stirred, waiting, always waiting. With her last cry echoing in the night, Sarah felt the light slip through her fingers like grains of sand. The shadows reeled back, regrouping in the cracks, but they weren't gone. They lingered, clawing at the fringes of her mind, whispering sweet lies that twisted like barbed wire around her sanity. "Your friends are in pain, Sarah," Jay's voice slithered through the air, oozing deceit. "They need you. But to help them, you must embrace your destiny." His silhouette danced with the shadows, a dark jester in a nightmare come to life. The pain throbbed in her arms, a reminder of her failure to keep the light alive. She breathed deeply, forcing the memories of laughter and friendship from her past to drown out the chaos. She envisioned their faces, the warmth of their smiles kindling a flicker deep within her. But the shadows weren't done. They clawed and pulled, grasping for her essence, feeding on her doubt. She staggered back, the ground trembling as the darkness surged forward, a tidal wave of despair. The night air grew colder, a biting chill that wrapped around her like a shroud. Sarah's breath hitched as the shadows formed into distinct shapes, grotesque visages of her lost friends twisted in agony. Each face was a shard of her heart being torn away, pulling her toward the chasm of surrender. "No!" she gasped, a single tear streaking down her cheek. "I want to let you take me." With desperate fury, Sarah fought back. She focused on the flickering light inside her, that glowing ember that refused to die. She staggered forward, hands trembling as the darkness writhed at her feet, desperate to reclaim their prize. "Do you really think you can resist forever?" J's voice rose, a thunderclap of malice. You're fading, Sarah. He laughed, a sound that echoed like shattering glass in the stillness. You belong to the shadows now. That twisted laugh ignited an ember of rage within her. You don't own me. She cried, her voice rising, reaching for that light again. With a grunt, she clawed at the air as if pulling the light from the depths of her soul. It erupted like a volcano, filling her with radiant energy. The shadows recoiled again, but Jay stood firm amidst them, grinning. You think your light can replace what you are? Embrace the truth. Then, he lunged, and a surge of darkness crashed over her, wrapping like a vice around her heart, and for a moment, she faltered. The weight of sorrow draped itself over her, dimming her spirit. She staggered, breathless, as memories flooded back, the fun, the innocence but also the betrayal. But those memories weren't just chains, they were weapons. Sarah summoned them, drawing strength from each painful moment. You can't break me, she shouted, channeling everything into one explosive burst of light. The darkness shrieked, blinding agony rippled through it. In that moment of searing brightness, Sarah realized she wasn't alone. Somewhere in the shadows flickered familiar lights, her friends, albeit distorted by the pull of darkness, but they're nonetheless fighting their own battles against JS influence. As the energy coalesced around her, pushing against the dark, Sarah saw visions of their faces, their eyes filled with unyielding defiance. She could save them. But the shadows wouldn't let go easily. They surged again, angered and vicious, grasping at her, clawing for her core. A sharp pain seared her side, a reminder of the price she paid. What would it take to truly conquer them? Her pulse pounded painfully in her ears. Fighting back doubt and dread, she screamed, "Together, we can overcome this." And just as her light seemed nearly extinguished, a flare ignited in the distance. A flicker of white, the first sign of dawn breaking against the veil of night. With a sudden clarity, she understood, it might be her final stand, but she still had time, she still could save them. But was it too late? The ground trembled beneath her as the dark shrieked in protest, and a chaotic vortex formed at the heart of J.S. laughter. Would the light be enough to vanquish the shadows once and for all, or was he just biding his time, waiting for the moment to strike when her defenses fell? As the first rays of dawn broke through the horizon, illuminating the battlefield, Sarah felt the tension snap. What awaited her now? The darkness surged, preparing for one final, desperate clash. The clash was loud and chaotic. Shadows twisted and writhed like a tempest, battling against Sarah's light. Each flicker of dawn that broke through felt like a lifeline. Sarah could hear whispers clawing at her mind, dense with despair. It's not enough, they hissed. They're lost to you, you're lost. The shadows enveloped her, cold and suffocating, stretching toward the dawn like tendrils of smoke. Breathing heavily, she fought back the panic rising in her chest. She tightened her fists, forcing every ounce of her strength into that small flame inside. She had to stand firm, had to believe. Keep moving, she whispered, though her voice barely made it past her chattering teeth. Her heart raced as she took a step forward, then another, each one feeling like running through quicksand. The shadows roared in fury, clawing at her legs, dragging her down, whispering promises of surrender. Join us, Sarah. J.S. voice slithered among the chaos. You'll find peace. You'll find power. The tempting offer seeped into her veins, cold and seductive, feeding on her doubts. What if she couldn't save them? What if fighting only brought more suffering? Stop! She screamed, shaking her head violently, willing herself to concentrate on their faces, their laughter, their hope. Every memory was a weapon she could wield. I want to let you trap me. With each recollection, the light swelled anew. Behind her, a chorus of voices joined, chanting her name, crawling through the darkness like a lifeline being thrown from a sinking ship. They were still out there, Mark, Lila, and Chris, fighting against their own shadows, pushing back. Sarah could feel the warmth of their presence bolstering her own resolve. That's it. Keep fighting. She yelled, desperation turning into a rallying cry. As the dawn blazed higher, the shadows recoiled, twisting and twisting in agony. Jay screamed, the sound full of rage and fear. "You think you can defeat me? This is your fate." But Sarah felt the energy of the light manifesting behind her, a wave of power that was building to an unstoppable force. She was not alone. The winds whipped fiercely, spiraling the shadows into a vortex, pulling at their very fabric. The light inside her sparked and crackled, ready to explode. It was now or never. Once more. She roared, the whole universe igniting beneath her words. She released everything, the laughter, the joy, the pain, the struggle, into one final release. The brilliance enveloped her, and she thrust her hands forward, sending it out like a cataclysmic shockwave. The ground shook violently as daylight clashed with darkness. For an instant, the shadows dissolved, revealing the true forms of her friends. Mark's hand reached for her, eyes wide with confusion and fear. "Sarah." But it all turned frantic as the darkness screamed back, clawing at its last chance. The vortex writhed, a spiral of nightmare trying to resist the brightness threatening to consume it. Don't give up." Sarah shouted, straining against the push and pull, battling the shadows that still clung to her heart. But then, just as triumph seemed to hang a whisper away, Jay's laughter erupted one last time, low and ominous. "You think this is the end? This is only the beginning." Suddenly, the shadows coalesced into a monstrous form, a grotesque, spiraling amalgamation of all her fears, memories, and failures, rising higher than the dawn itself, shrouding everything once more. Sarah gasped as her heart stopped. The dawn flickered, shadows looming, revenge echoing in Jay's voice. Would her friends find salvation, or had they fallen into a deeper abyss? The exhilarating terror took hold as she faced the swirling chaos, knowing now that the fight was far from over. She steeled herself, knowing that her real test waited in the growing darkness. But where would her next step lead her? The air thickened, each breath a labor as Sarah struggled against the monstrous shadow. It loomed like a black tide, a swirling mass of despair, doubt, and inevitability. She felt the weight of it pressing down, trying to smother her resolve. Panic clawed at her throat. Had she lost everything? "Stand firm." She shouted into the void, forcing her voice to resonate with courage. Behind her, the light flickered, sputtering but not extinguished. It was a promise of hope, struggling against the overwhelming darkness. "Help us," Sarah Mark's voice reverberated, a fragile echo trapped within the turmoil. Chris's shape flickered down below, arms raised as if reaching towards her. She couldn't let them down. No matter how hopeless it felt, she had to fight. "Stay sane. Stay strong." As she scanned the writhing shadows, she felt an odd sensation creeping up her spine, a betrayal that sent chills through her body. What if her friends were truly lost? Doubts began their insidious crawl, feeding on her fears as Jay's voice returned, sweet and poisonous. "Join me, Sarah. You're stronger than this. You always were." She screamed, shaking her head violently. The shadows around her pulsed, reacting to her defiance, almost like they had a heartbeat. The darkness was alive, and it craved her capitulation. With every ounce of power she had remaining, Sarah focused on the warmth of her friends, conjuring their laughter, their fights, their passion. The memories surged through her, materializing in her mind, igniting her soul. Together, they had faced shadows before they had won. She thrust her palm forward into the swirling chaos, summoning the last of her light. Forward. Sparks ignited from her fingertips, illuminating a small section of darkness. But it was a flicker against an encroaching storm. The monstrous figure roared, and she could feel icy tendrils reaching for her. "You think you can vanquish me with memories? You don't even know the truth." A gust of cold air struck her as she realized she had been fighting the wrong battle. "What truth?" she shouted, her voice a desperate challenge. But the shadows only pulsed, seeming to wallow in serenity, waiting for her to crack. Suddenly, the air shifted. The cacophony of heavy breathing and hissing murmurs grew louder. "It's not just Jay," a new voice whispered, unsettling and familiar. It echoed from somewhere deep within the shadows, darkly seducing. You've done this before, Sarah. Each battle only feeds the cycle. Bile rose in her throat. Visions of her past attempts to defeat the shadows clawed at her mind. Each retreat, each failure, and her friends' faces plagued her, haunted and hollowed by their struggles. Had she really won before if they still suffered? The tendrils reached closer, brushing her skin with an icy caress. Join them, Sarah. Stop fighting. You know the truth you've always known. They pulled tighter, constricting around her like a snake. Fear burst in her chest, and time felt suspended. Was surrender the only way out? No. A flicker of defiance sparked. If you want me, you'll have to fight for me. With newfound fury, she let out an ear-piercing scream. The shadows writhed at her outburst, twisting and contorting as though in agony. In the maelstrom, for a mere instant, she saw the outline of another figure, not Jay, not her friends, but a silhouette of someone lost within the fog. Sarah, the voice was petrified, yet shattered. Who was that? As she teetered on the brink of despair and determination, the answer felt both tantalizing and terrifying, unraveling the very fibers of her sanity. The truth flickered before her, urgent and agonizing. But would she have the strength to grasp it? Before she could decide, the darkness surged with ferocity, swallowing the light whole. Welcome back to the beginning. J.'s laughter slithered in her ears as she was dragged deeper into the shadows, the pounding echo of her heartbeat drowning in the chaos. What lay ahead? Another chance for redemption, or was she spiraling into a fate far worse than death? Time was running out. The shadows closed in faster, wrapping around her like icy fingers. Sarah's heart pounded, a frantic rhythm against the smothering darkness that whispered her worst fears, reminding her of failures and losses, of the friends she'd nearly lost to the storm of horror. The world around her swung between existence and oblivion, and in that dizzying space, she felt like she was dissipating. Join me, J.'s voice coiled around her, sweet as honey but laced with venom. Everything you've achieved is pointless. You can't fight what you truly are, embrace it. No. She shouted, her voice slicing through the chaos, clawing back to the surface where hope still flickered. With each moment, the ground trembled anew, threatening to swallow her whole, but something inside her resisted. An ember flickered in her chest, igniting in response to her rage and fear. Each face of her friends flashed before her, their voices woven into a tapestry of strength and love. You're not alone. They urged, resonating through her soul. Fight for us. Fight for all of us. Taking a deep, shuddering breath that tasted like fire, Sarah summoned her memories, laughter shared on sunny days, cozy nights around a fire, the spark of friendship that buoyed her through darkness. The shadows reacted violently, writhing and shrieking, sensing the resurgence of her energy. I want to let you take them. She screamed, her heart lurching. With renewed vigor, she stretched her hands toward the encroaching dark, her light pushing outward with every ounce she could muster, illuminating the sea of chaos around her. It crackled against the suffocating black, sending raw energy racing through her veins. Stop. You think light can defeat me? Jay howled, his form shimmering amidst the shadows. But Sarah surged forward, drawing strength from her friends. Shadows shrieked as they recoiled, not from fear but from a now unmistakable force at play. For every one of her memories, a spark ignited in her palms. This is who I am. She yelled, letting the light burst forth explosively, directing it toward the core of the darkness. The ground vibrated underfoot as the shadows clashed, pushing against her radiant force. Together. She roared, envisioning her friends taking shape behind her, joining the defense as their laughter rang clear, filling her heart to bursting. The images coalesced, Mark, Lila, Chris all unified, their eyes bright and defiant. As her voice echoed into the abyss, the dark creature howled, twisted, screamed, erupting in a cacophony of fury and insanity. The shadows fought back, trying to regain their grasp, but now they splintered against her light, revealing the truth that had been hidden. Your truth is not my destiny. She cried, feeling the tide shift beneath her feet. The impact rolled through her as it pushed back the dark tide, and that S when she saw it a fracture in the shadow, a glimpse of clarity beneath the chaos, pulsing with light. Memories twisted and turned, snapping under the pressure of her awakening will. Look! Sarah shouted to her friend's faint forms, pushing against every ounce of fear. We're not lost, we're fighting for each other. The crack widened, illuminating the ground around where the shadows had formed their monstrous shape. Jay stumbled, his form shifting as if unable to reconcile two realities, the dark and the light. No! He bellowed, voice rising to a shriek, full of desperation and terror as he strained against the force of her resolve. Yes! Sarah shouted back, her voice booming like thunder. The choice is mine. In one final push, Sarah let everything surge forth, releasing the full strength of her memories and light. It crashed like a wave, washing away the shadows in an overwhelming cascade. The darkness faded, fizzled, shrunk back, shrieking as her friends began to converge, their intertwined souls reaching for her. Don't let go. They cried, desperation lacing their words, and she felt their warmth wrapping around her. With one enormous blast, the light erupted, filling every corner and illuminating the black veil that once confined her. For a heartbeat, everything stood still. In that moment, the shadows melted away, revealing the once twisted faces of her friends, now free from the grip of darkness. Sarah. They breathed, joy and relief woven together. She felt every ounce of their love wrapping around her, lifting her from despair. But Jay, he wasn't done yet. In a last desperate act, he formed one last shadow, thick and heavy, a monstrous visage that ebbed and flowed. You can win. He screamed, a furious beast thrashing against the light, but it began to crack, light pushing through every fissure he created. Watch me, Sarah whispered, and with one decisive movement, she thrust her hands forward again. The dawn, now at its zenith, erupted fully, driving back the final remnants of the darkness. I won't let you bind us any longer, she declared, directing the final beam of light toward Jay. The world brightened, washing away the night before illuminating a safe haven of warmth and love. The shadows dissolved, until nothing but nothing remained. As the first rays of the sun flooded the neighborhood, her friends stood beside her, tangible and real. Each of them glowed with the remnants of the fight, showcasing scars that would serve as reminders of their resilience. We won, Mark whispered, pulling her into a tight embrace. The warmth of their love, their bond, swelled around her, turning their fear into a memory, each breath a testament to their shared victory. Let us rebuild, Lila smiled, eyes filled with hope as she wrapped the others in a comforting group hug. They stood together, united in the light, grateful for the journey that had brought them back from the abyss. No longer held captive by the nights of shadow, moving forward as a community, they breathed in the crisp morning air, the promise of a new beginning shimmering on the horizon. As the shadows vanished completely, Sarah felt the weight lift from her chest. Yes, her past was part of her, but so was her strength, her spirit and her friends. And as they ventured out into their once familiar neighborhood, Sarah whispered, we'll never forget. But together, we'll thrive. This was a farewell to the dark, a promise of brighter days ahead. Now, before you go and relish in this shocking conclusion, you need to subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories that will twist your heart just like this one. And please, smash that like button now. Let us feed the algorithm so we can continue bringing you these electrifying tales. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about the ending. What do you think will happen next? Don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. True fans know the importance of supporting the channel. It's time to do your part.